Hi everyone. This is just a quick video talking about a new book of mine that came out a few weeks ago called A Philosophical Case for Ecological Pessimism. If you're interested, there's a link to the full manuscript below for free, of course. And I just wanted to say a few words about what the book is, what it covers in case you're interested. So to begin with, a brief summary. The book argues that our current ecological crisis, which includes problems like climate change, ocean acidification, and mass extinction, raises various moral issues, including a high probability of injustice and far-reaching harm. So the book defends a position that I call ecological pessimism, an attitude whose core feature is the belief that ecological catastrophe is likely to occur in the future at some point. So my defense of ecological pessimism has two components. First, I make the case that the relevant ecological facts about our world make pessimism a reasonable and indeed plausible expectation. Second, the book argues that ecological pessimism is morally and practically appropriate. So pessimism is a distinctively moral kind of pessimism because the failure to avert ecological catastrophe leads to great ills for human beings and non-human nature alike. My account responds to likely objections to ecological pessimism and makes the case against ecological optimism. Despite all this, I do make it clear that being pessimistic about our ecological prospects is compatible with what I call the melioristic project of improving our bad condition. So basically, I argue that environmental philosophy as a way of life, with its emphasis on environmental virtue and its rich resources for developing various practical exercises, is a robust and attractive option for the ecological pessimist. So the general idea is that we face many severe ecological risks. I'll scroll down to the table of contents so you can take a look. These include things like ocean acidification, mass extinction, various other worries, including nuclear disasters, things like that. And then I make the argument that it's simply likely that one of these risks will come to be realized, right? Even if any particular one of them is unlikely to play out, the fact is that we're rolling the dice on many, many severe risks, and it only takes one of them to bring about catastrophe. So how should we feel about that? Should we just be inert? Should we be of the mind that we should just give up, that there's no point to acting? Well, in chapter 6, I draw on the so-called meliorism of American pragmatism, philosophers like William James and John Dewey. And they view meliorism as something that's sort of in between pessimism and optimism. So the idea is that although we can't bring about a wonderful world, and perhaps it's not feasible for us to avoid ecological catastrophe given our various commitments and unwillingness to change, we nonetheless can make the world a less bad place than it might otherwise be. So a clear example, I think, is climate change. So oftentimes we hear the idea that we should try and limit warming relative to pre-industrial temperatures to 2 degrees Celsius, and anything beyond that might be dangerous. Plenty of people argue that 2 is dangerous enough, but you get the point. Suppose we miss that target, right? We're not doing a great job so far, so it's very plausible that we will not limit warming to 2 degrees. It would be a mistake, I argue, to sort of just give up on mitigating our greenhouse gas emissions and simply saying, we missed the 2-degree target, who cares, there's no point now. Because 2.5 or 3 degrees of warming is likely to be much, much less damaging than, say, 4, 5, or 6 degrees. To take an extreme case, it's certainly feasible for us to avoid turning the Earth into something like Venus through a runaway greenhouse effect, which would be an absolute catastrophe, all life on Earth perishing. It is very feasible to still avoid that, right? To limit warming to something that is somewhat manageable. So say we do limit the warming to 5 degrees. That will no doubt bring all sorts of injustice and harm to various people and also to non-human systems. So that might be bad, but it is significantly less bad, presumably, than the extinction of all life on Earth. And that's the melioristic idea that we can at least aim for practical goals, feasible goals that we can achieve, even if we can't do or are unlikely to do what it is that we ought to do, right? So we can't have utopia, perhaps, but we don't have to have a complete disaster of a world. Right? So Some catastrophes are worse than others, in other words, and we have good reason to try and limit the damage of those catastrophes. So again, that's just a very quick overview of the ideas in the book. If you're interested, please check out the full manuscript. Again, that is linked below. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.